Well, there's what's happening currently in the sky, and there's our own core makeup.
Yep.
It's where they meet.
Yeah.
Which is called transits, right? And so there are times when we feel a burst forth.
Uh-huh.
The question is, do we pay attention when our energy is saying, okay, now it's time to rest? If you are planting a garden, I'm no gardener, but if you're planting a garden, what I do know is you pull out the weeds or the flower like every day to check, they're not going to grow, right? So it is about doing the work and then sitting with it, being in the pause. If you don't know what to do, do no thing.
Oh my gosh, Dani. Okay. I'm so excited.
So excited to be here.
I love, this is a dream come true. This is a full circle moment for me, Dani Beinstein, to have you here on my show.
Do you remember when we met at Soho House in Nashville?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm moving here. And you were just so ecstatic and excited for this next chapter of your life. And now here it is.
And you really reflected to me what Nashville is kind of becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And just how alive it is with consciousness and spiritual people and a vibrant community of women and great food. And you're from LA, I'm from Chicago. We appreciate certain things, and Nashville kind of has it all. And you were here, which was a huge bonus for me.
I'm actually from New York City, but I did live in LA for 15 years. But just because people may be like, she doesn't feel very LA to me.
You don't.
I'm not.
You are quite an anomaly, actually, in general, which I'm going to talk about as one of my questions for you. And I say that with so much love.
No, I've always been an outsider, and I have no reservations or hang-ups about that.
Yeah.
And I don't hold on to it as an identity. It's just wherever I am, I seem to be just slightly outside. And I think it's the way that I see it is witness consciousness.
I think that's your gift. I think that's totally your magic, actually. You're such a beautiful reflector, and you see things and can articulate things in a way that, and so simply and purely. And I want to talk about a few of those things that you have said to me as my friend and my astrologer over the years, and how absolutely life-changing they were, you being that witness. But before I get into those questions, I want to ask you the first question, which is, what are you spiritually hustling for?
Simplicity. So I would say that my life has been really unconventional in some ways, conventional in some ways, but the through line is I carry a kind of Virgoan minimalism. The place that I don't, and the place where this is not really the right term, but where I can get grabby and where I have to work on it is travel. Because it does bring me such joy. But I didn't travel or leave the country for 11 years.
Really?
Yeah, when I was doing my spiritual work.
Wow.
And I had grown up going abroad and, would see people on social media and wanting to go abroad. And then starting in my mid-late 30s when I was able to, so my mid-30s, I had an almost ravenous desire. And we had landed in Portugal, and I had turned to Daniel as my partner, and I said, what about, Copenhagen next? And he's like, we just landed in Portugal. What are you doing? And so that has been the place, which is, I have to watch myself, and I have to stay present for the thing that I have wanted for so long. But when I am not traveling, my life is incredibly simple. I'm out in the woods with my dog. But even when I was living in my 20s in the East Village, I lived in a walk-up tenement, and my real satisfaction and joy came from this coffee shop that I went to every day that was filled with artists and creatives, and theater was my thing. How can I go to the theater as much as possible? And there was a simplicity to it.
Yeah.
Theater and museums and culture. And so I really try and move towards the essence of a thing.
This is a beautiful segue into my next question for you. I have so many questions for you. But you really strike me as, not strike me, I know you as one of the smartest people I know. You are so culturally and literarily knowledgeable, and like a true intellectual is how I define you. And when I think of Dani Beinstein in the world, like I could see you being like a philosophy teacher or like a travel journalist or historian. Why astrology?
I didn't choose it.
Okay.
So when I was in college, I created my own major around literature and philosophy, and basically looking at the moral zeitgeist of a given era through literature and fine art. So what was art reflecting about the morality of the time? And even though I'm Jewish, I actually spent a lot of time focused on Christianity and the history of Christianity and Gnostic Christianity, and then the creation of the church, and on and on and on. So I was armed with a lot of useless knowledge.
Okay.
Totally useless knowledge. I'm the third born of four. My parents really, really stressed education. And there wasn't this focus on, you then have to go out and, you have to study in college like communications, because communications, or you have to do pre-law. It was like, college is a privilege. And I loved college. So they were supportive of whatever I wanted to study. But my parents aren't great at structure. And I was really lost coming out of college, because I was the kid who loved my classes, was going by myself to the theater, going to museums by myself. I spent a lot of time by myself, but I wasn't lonely or alone. I had friends, but I just loved to pursue those things. And a lot of college kids don't really so as much. So I was really lost. And I thought, oh, well, I, kind of had thought politics, had thought political media. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be Maureen Dowd, who was an op-ed writer for the New York Times. That's like who I wanted to be. And I realized I didn't have drive. I had curiosity.
Wow.
And, there's a lot of different reasons for that, but it's something that I lacked basically until I had my near-death experience at 36. And then all of a sudden, I wanted structure, and I wanted to create a life that was in the physical world. I was very esoteric before that. Something shifted in me in a really big way.
What happened? I don't know about this near-death experience.
So I was driving on the 101. I had graduated from my master's program in spiritual psychology, and I was starting to teach meditation and starting to co-lead circles and starting this path towards astrology. And, we'll talk about that. I can explain more about that journey, but had taken a month-long sabbatical and set up a bunch of Airbnbs for myself in Northern California. Driving up, it was an eclipse. It was Labor Day weekend, and my car flipped 4 times on the 101. I ended up upside down, sideways, and diagonal on the opposite side. I have no idea.
You didn't
I have
get
no
hit
memory.
something?
Didn't hit anybody. Like 4 p.m. on Labor Day weekend. All I remember is waking up, looking in the car, like wheels were above me, and there being maybe 5 or 6 people looking at me as if they'd seen a ghost. And I thought, is this the afterlife?
Oh.
Because they were just looking at me like a miracle. And I got up, and the 101, which is a major,
yes,
was a parking lot. It was somewhere near Monterey. And
you were the only car
and it didn't hit anything, wasn't hit, have no memory of what happened. But I know that in the weeks leading up to it, I had every conversation I needed to have. I had everything in my life was cleared out. And when I saw shamans after, they said the plan was to go. The plan was always to go, and you made a decision to stay. And so that's why I think I had no drive.
And once that happened to you, you found your drive?
It's more like I found, okay, I'm going to be here. I could never imagine my life 40 plus. I had always desperately wanted children, never had children, still don't have children, but I could never imagine it. I could never imagine it and actually happening. And in my high school yearbook, they say, where are you going to be in 25 years? And I wrote, alive, I hope.
Oh my God.
So there's something in my consciousness that really thought I was going to go. And so everything kind of changed after that. And that's when my work really started to take off. But I never set out, coming back, I never set out to be an astrologer. I wanted to be all these other things. I kind of thought, oh, I love film. And so maybe I'll go into film. I had interned at Tribeca Films. I was all over the map. Really, I had worked on a political campaign. I had no clear, this is what I want to do. And I was pretty lost. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should move out to LA because I've always loved film and storytelling. And so I land in LA and I get a job at a entertainment law firm. Because I also thought, oh, well, I should probably just go back to law school because I had kind of studied philosophy and my professors in undergrad had said, you really should be a lawyer. You have that kind of brain. And so I thought, okay, I'll try this. And then kind of bounced around in the industry. Again, there was no, I thought, oh, I'd love to be a producer, but I have no competitor in me.
Yeah, same.
It's really a challenge.
I get it.
I don't have it. And because I wasn't materially driven, my mom used to come visit me and she would say, you don't even have enough clothing to layer. Like, I just didn't want to own things. I wanted to move very loosely through this world. And so I was kind of lost and I had gotten into this relationship that had me just flat on my face. And I thought, oh, my oldest sister had said, there's this program, this master's in spiritual psychology. My parents were like, what? I mean, they're supportive, but they're like, what? If you want to study psychology, there's Ivy Leagues you can go to.
Right.
And so I signed up for this program. And through this program, I started to understand deeper parts of myself. And then I met this woman, Susie, who had started Unplug, which was kind of like the soul cycle of meditation. And she said, hey, you have this master's, just get in there and teach meditation because you can hold that kind of space. I see it. I started doing these circles. And I had been studying astrology privately. This is probably an important part, since I was 19.
Okay.
And so when I started co-leading these circles with my friend Paula Malice, she's a doula, I would give the astrology talk every new moon. She would, we would talk about the spiritual aspect of it and we would hold space. And then people would say, would you read for me?
Wow.
Would you read for me? And it just kept happening and kept happening. I did not set out to do this.
Wow.
It's basically, I was given raw clay and I said, okay, I can make a sculpture from this. And then in 2016, I had my accident. And then coming out of that, it's kind of a blur for me, but I just know that people just kept asking for readings and asking for readings.
You're amazing at it.
Thank you. And then it just happened.
Yeah.
So when people are like, what was your strategy? Absolutely none, embarrassingly so. And
can I pause there? Because it's not embarrassing. I actually think it's beautiful. I think your whole story of how you danced in non-attachment and curiosity, competition, while necessary in certain ways, can also be a toxic trait.
Yeah.
And that you found your quote unquote mission, purpose in co-creation with the universe, whether you realized it or not. I mean, so many women who I work with, listen to my show, they want the plan, they need the plan, and they grip to that. And I love that this is how it unfolded. It's very feminine, actually.
It is actually really feminine in that way. I just always followed the yellow bricks.
Yeah.
And then each one showed up but there was a while I was sleeping on my sister's couch.
Sure.
I didn't own a lot. So I had to be willing to do that, but I didn't see any other choice because I am not wired for certain environments. Other people are more wired for it. I'm not. And so it was confusing for a while, but I just somehow trusted. If I'm being really, really, really honest, I really thought I would meet a man and become a mom. And that's, you know, before Daniel, the men that I had dated or been in situationships, if I'm honest, were much older, much more established. And I thought, oh, I'll just bounce off of this. This makes sense to me. I know how to be your support, and I know how to raise. I was obsessed with babies. I had done a lot of babysitting, and I thought, oh, this is my mission. So I was waiting for that, and that never came. And I didn't realize that I had to be that which I was seeking for in a man, but not from a masculine standpoint.
Totally.
That was really it. Is I just thought, oh, you know, I love going to theater and I love going to museums, and like, I'll just meet a guy and then we'll have children and he'll take care of me financially, and this is how it'll all work out.
Yeah.
That is what I witnessed in my parents.
Sure.
My dad was the provider. My mom was the homemaker. There were 4 kids. My mom really struggled emotionally. My dad actually took up most of the weight also at home. But that's what I thought.
And here you are.
Yeah. And so, you know, make a plan and God laughs, I guess. It wasn't in the cards for me.
I deeply relate on a certain level. And thank you for opening up about that, because I think not all women, many women, I want to make a blanket statement, like want to find the guy that will take care of her. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I told myself my whole life I never wanted that. Then I met Brian when we first met. He was this rich guy. And I was like, cool, this is new and fun. And then everything kind of fell apart in his career.
Yeah.
And because I was like, I'm not marrying him for his money. I love him, which I do. Yeah. And then it all dismantled in a coaching session one day where my therapist was like, yeah, you actually wanted him to rescue you financially because that's what your dad did.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so powerful to say that out loud. And yet when that doesn't happen, we self-actualize.
That process.
Or we can.
Yes. Well, the opportunity is there. The seed is there, right? And so that process of becoming, and listen, I am not savvy in the way like, oh, I have these investments and I talk to this financial advisor. I am not savvy in that way. And it's something I'm trying to grow into. But again, I live there's a simplicity.
What you said at the beginning.
Yeah. So I don't sit here and say, oh, I've got it all figured out in any way, shape, or form.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. And I think that's the thing. And, you know, I have a lot of clients who are full-time moms, and I think that's beautiful. And I have a lot of clients who have been killing it in the corporate world and are asking themselves big questions. The fascinating thing to me is that in the, let's say, early to mid 40s, what I'm seeing is women who have leaned into either of those maybe more binary tracks.
Yes.
Go, what about the other piece?
Wow.
And there's time. You know, our souls are not going to leave here before we've learned the lessons and actualized how we've needed to actualize, right? Or played the roles or learned the lessons inherent in those roles or the spiritual meaning before. So everyone has their own path.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong way. I think we are living in a world, especially with the culture war ping pong, where it's very easy to say, this is the way.
Yes.
There is no the way.
So I'm one of your clients.
Yes.
And lucky me. Thank God for all those twists and turns and detours and explorative, serendipitous choices and non-choices you made to land here. And I'm neither one of those. Mm-hmm. I'm not a mom and I'm not a corporate woman. Mm-hmm. I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes. And
I remember in 2022, we've become very close. We're like basically neighbors and we talk and text all the time, but I try and see you like at least once or twice a year. And every one of my sessions with you has been so potent and truly like defining in kind of how I reimagine my perspective. And you said something to me, and I think I shared this with you. I wrote about this in my new book, The Light Work. I was deep in my burnout in 2022. Something just came up in my body when I said that. Like, I remember sitting on your sofa in your house, and I was struggling with money. And my business had been on this like rocket ship for like so many years. And then we were like plateauing because that's what happens when you get bigger. Yes. But I was starting to feel so much scarcity and all of this failure, like just tons of self-loathing around it. And you said something to me in that session that I want to share and I want to dig into. You said, Jessica, I'm going to paraphrase here, but we are living in a world of man-made constructs that we assume everything needs to look like this all the time. Straight lines. We live in a cyclical world, and everything on this planet is nature, including your business. And it expands and it contracts and it dies and it is reborn and it goes through cycles and rhythms. So for you to expect it to be any different is part of your programming to really look at. I mean, you said it with more love, but I was like, holy shit. And I really think that there are so many women, especially those that are listening to my show, that are struggling with that patriarchal paradigm. And so can we talk about that?
Yeah. So it's natural law, right? If we really attune to the cycles of nature, we realize that everything expands and contracts. A baby is born because a uterus, right, contracts and then expands, pushing the baby out, right? And so we tend to forget natural law. We tend to think mind over matter completely, right? If I strategize this, the idea is bigger, bigger, bigger. And I think the joke I made to you was like, that's how we end up with strawberry Coke, which is
yes, I remember that, the strawberry Coke. Like, who fucking needs strawberry Coke?
Exactly.
Yes.
And so this idea that bigger is always better. The other thing is that, you know, our nervous systems can only hold so much. And I think about, I have friends who are exorbitantly successful and it is incredible. And I think, what a load to manage.
Yeah.
Right? Like multiple homes, like constantly on planes, constantly, right? I say that as someone who wants to, you know, travel all the time.
It's different. I get it though.
But that kind of management. And then if our system is burning out, we tend to shut that down, which is how dis-ease happens.
Correct.
Right? And we say, oh, no, I can just override this because I need that more. And that has set us up on a treadmill as individuals, right? And as a collective, where we are on a speedboat to where? Where are we going? Because I think, especially with that near-death experience, death never feels far to me. And I actually haven't lost anyone that I've been super close to, but I feel like the veil is very thin.
I agree.
And life is long and it's also really short. And it's really fragile and it's really robust. And it's all these things. But when I think about it and I'm in a moment of rushing, what I try and tell myself is, you don't get to stay here forever. And me especially, I feel like I'm on borrowed time. Right? So with that, I go, I'll take the metaphor of like, you know, wine travel. Instead of being far off and planning that, look at this abundance of land that you are sitting on.
Yeah.
Like, pay attention to the butterfly, pay attention to the pops that are right in front of you and be here, because more we can, like, our stomachs can only hold so much at a buffet.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Totally. So
I think our culture, the economic engine, is ravenous
and consumption driven.
And it's never enough.
Never.
It's the hungry ghost.
Yes.
Right?
I need to tell you that message, frankly, that happened in 22. I had some very expansive healers come in with help me with my nervous system, learning how to root into my body. This conversation is the inspiration for this entire show.
I don't even know what to say.
I mean it. It just unhooked me and opened my eyes to for what, Jessica? Like, what are you trying to prove? And where is the end game? And it just, my friend said to me the other day, like, so much of my success has been driven from my anxiety. It was a very, very powerful reflection. It's true. And she was just, it was not meant to be flippant. She just said, what if you didn't care? Like, what if you just actually didn't care? How would it feel? What would you need to learn? How would you need to learn how to trust life?
How much more powerful is it to operate from that place? Like true empowerment, not positional power.
And that's, to me, that's the feminine.
Yeah.
That's the attracting and the allowing and the magnetism that can come when we are, yes, fully aligned in what we're here to do and trust that we matter and are in our joy around our work.
Yes.
But it's not the pushing, grinding, toxic, hustling masculine.
Yes.
And this isn't about gender or binary. It's just a value that I think it's just so important for women to hear. And it's a commitment. It's not like, okay, I'm going to set the intention to be the divine feminine receptacle and let it all come. It's a daily practice.
Yes. We talked about this, like with the sign of Capricorn.
I love that moon circle. You gave me a whole new love for that sign.
Because people think it's a masculine sign, but it's a feminine sign.
Deep grandmother,
yes.
yin.
And also this idea that femininity is pure passivity. Like, tell me a time in history where women were just passive.
No way.
Women are doers,
yes.
right? And multitaskers. And so it's, where is that coming from?
Right. And what's the motivation?
Exactly. What's the core drive and motivation? Not the thing itself. We talked about that, right? Like, it's not that working is bad. I love to work. People could absolutely call me a workaholic.
This is one of my next questions for you. Okay. This is a beautiful. So, like I said, my times with you are so potent and treasured. I was at one of your moon circles. So Dani hosts these monthly new moon circles in Nashville that call in the most high vibe women. I'm always so sad if I'm out of town and I miss them. Like, I look forward to them. It's beautiful what you've created. Thank you for doing it. And each new moon clicks into the sign and every circle's different. And I came to you, I think it was actually during Capricorn season, in that small group. And I said to you, Dani, I said, I am trying to reconcile my deep ambitions and my deep desire for rest. And you said, Jessica, you have made a projection to some degree in your mind that working hard is bad and it's wrong or shameful or depleting, when in truth, you get a lot of life from work and it's very regenerative for you. And I took that and I've ran with that. So I wanted to ask you, how do we tune to astrology in times of burnout or potential burnout?
Well, there's what's happening currently in the sky, and then there's our own core makeup.
Yep.
It's where they meet, which is called transits, right? And so there are personal cycles, then there are universal cycles. And so it's really about attuning to our rhythm. So there are times when we feel a burst forth. The question is, do we pay attention when our energy is saying, okay, now it's time to rest? If you are planting a garden, I'm no gardener, but if you're planting a garden, what I do know is you pull out the weeds or the flower like every day to check, they're not going to grow.
Yeah.
Right. So it is about doing the work and then sitting with it, being in the pause. If you don't know what to do nothing. Do nothing.
You say that all the time.
My mentor told me that, although it was a business mentor when I was trying to figure out what I was doing. But he said that to me. He's like, you're asking all the right questions. Just keep asking the questions and do no thing until it becomes clear. And it did.
Yeah.
I didn't force something.
That's good.
Before it's ready. And I try not to do that now. I try and, if I'm having a slow week, I let it be slow.
That's good.
Because there's something in that for me. Now that was a process because I had my own anxiety, is this going to go away? Because I love what I do. And I was like, oh, are the clients going to go away? Is this it? And then no, I just needed that pause because maybe I needed to write something I needed to reflect on something. Creative people need time to do nothing, right? And in European cultures, that's more understood.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's, changing in some ways, but I try and listen to that. So I work a lot. I see a lot of clients. I have a hard time saying no. If someone needs me on a weekend, if I'm available, I will do it. I really love that is what drives me, to be there for people in that way.
It's very true. I see that from you.
But then if I need to rest, I rest. But what I notice is that the universe gives it to me. Mm-hmm. Do I take it? Mm-hmm. That's its own kind of abundance and gift.
Totally.
Or do I freak out and add anxiety and push away the thing or be in resistance to the thing rather than just embrace it?
And let's just call out, at least in my experience, I just had a whole week by myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My husband's out of town and I had no plans. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of that time working. Mm-hmm. I had a very busy week last week, on calls all day. And there was a part of me that felt like, God, I don't want to be in this cycle again. Yeah. But then I looked back and reflected. I'm like, well, you're doing all of these things that you've wanted to do. You're on all these podcasts. You're coaching women. You've gotten what you wished for. Yeah. And then I'm just clicking into the paradoxes. And then over the weekend, I took a Jessica weekend, got my nails done. I went for a hike. I was by myself. Yeah. And there was such an exquisite freedom in it, and nourishment, and also a loneliness. Yeah. And so it's being in the both and.
Yes. And also I think embracing loneliness.
So big.
In its moments. Because when Daniel's been away, and I live out, right? It's not that far, but I also don't love to leave my dogs. I'm not great at leaving. I'm a little codependent with the dogs.
Same with me.
So I have to they hate the car. It's a whole thing. And, I will feel a loneliness when he leaves, especially if there's some spaciousness around it. And then I sink into it and I go, okay, there's space here.
Yes.
What wants to come up? What wants to move?
And honestly, when I feel that loneliness, it's a tender feeling. And it's sort of, I don't mean to sound like existential kinky, but it's kind of exquisite. That book is so life-changing. Like, we all get a little fucking off on our pain. And that was like, that book. But that loneliness is this cavern where you can tend to yourself and meet yourself and hold yourself.
And fill yourself up with yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And and speaking of filling yourself up, this is how I have turned to the rhythms, whether it's through astrology or not, in my times of busyness and potential, not burnout, but that was the question I'd asked, but potentially is being the only way that I can fill my cup is to be alone, even if it's uncomfortable. Because I don't think your cup should be full. I think it needs to be overflowing so that you have enough for you and others, especially if you're a woman and you're a giver, and someone like you, someone like me that's pouring into clients all day long.
This is interesting because there's another theory, which is that your cup should be half full.
Tell me more about that.
So filled enough, but space to let the new in.
To receive. Yeah. Oh, Dani Beinstein, with your freaking witness wisdom, potent bombs you drop.
Because you're overflowing.
I actually really love that reframe. I do. I think because honestly, I have such trauma in my body from the depletion. Yeah. Like when I think of, let's just use the image of a divine feminine chalice. Yeah. Mine had ash at the bottom. Like it wasn't just empty, it was cast ash, like cigarette ash. Yeah. That's how I felt in my soul in my burnout. And so I've made it a huge practice in the last few years to ensure that that's never going to happen again, that I am filling myself up solitude and boredom is one way. Taking nature walks is another.
Yeah.
Traveling is another. Going out and eating great food and being with friends and not talking about work is another.
Yeah.
Doing all of my healing practices, being with my husband, you know, the things that truly fill me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the real, I write about this in my new book too. I talk about the 8 divine feminine embodiments of wealth.
Mm.
And the final one is receptivity. Like I say, how most women can barely receive a compliment. Like, how are we supposed to receive millions of dollars or our greatest next lover or best opportunity? Like, someone says, you look beautiful. I'll fucking stop. I look like shit. We can't even receive. And so I love that you said that, because I think it's such a upgrade and a reframe for me, as much as I think women listening. That's beautiful.
I think it's important also to embrace spaciousness just in and of itself, because it's like I tell people during an eclipse, they're like, what do I do to plan? And I say, don't. Listen, pay attention, be open, you know, don't overfill your schedule.
Yes.
See what wants to come through.
Create the spaciousness. That's good. Okay, let's talk about astrology. I have a few questions on this front. I have heard very mixed messages if we are not in the age of Aquarius already.
So Pluto, what I think that is referring to is Pluto moving into Aquarius.
Right?
So Pluto is currently in Aquarius until November, September, and then it'll dip back into September. November is the election. So it'll dip back into Capricorn, and then in January, it'll re-enter Aquarius until 2044.
So how many years is that? Like 20 years? 19 years?
It stays in different signs for different amount of time. So Pluto is the slowest moving planet. In astronomy, it's been demoted. So Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008.
And what did that represent when Pluto being in Capricorn?
So Capricorn is the structures and establishments of our lives, right? So Pluto moving into Capricorn, Wall Street crashed with the recession.
Yes.
And then we had Me Too. There's been a kind of takedown of these established orders. The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius were the American and French revolutions themselves. So you can feel that energy brewing.
Yes.
Different sectors of society will say they represent the next new path, right? But from a wide angle lens, it's that rumbling and that shaking up and that moving back to this idea of freedom, right? The French Revolution, like liberté, right? And this breakdown of this entrenched established order. No, so if you look at, let's say, in the American Revolution or the Declaration of Independence, it was saying, we do not want to be taxed without representation, right? We want governance over ourselves. We don't want to be paying to the monarchy, right? And so, and with the French Revolution, it was like Versailles, and we don't want the Les Miserables, right? Like we can't even afford bread, and
look at you and your golden castle.
Exactly. So we see parallels in that very much, right? So there's the kind of esoteric sector of spirituality and wellness that is very much celestial and not rooted in the everyday and the mundane, right? And so there's a lot of these high-minded ideas, but they have to be filtered through the density of the human condition.
Yeah.
And so it's very, very messy, which is what we're seeing right now, right?
On so many levels.
Right, because the energy has to filter through whatever level of consciousness each of us is. And we all have our stuff. Anybody who says they don't have their stuff, anybody should run away from, right?
Agreed.
We all have our stuff, our shadowy bits, our sticky bits, our uncomfortable bits, right? So all of that has to get filtered through that. And it has to get filtered through, I have to pick up eggs. I have to pick up the kids from school. You know, I had, you know, during the eclipse, so many, this past recent eclipse, so many people reaching out to me. I'm fighting so much.
I was one of them.
Yes.
I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Yes. And, you know,
So intense.
it is intense. And so we don't always know how to filter that intensity. And so it can come out as rage. It can come out as fighting. It can come out misdirected. And so you take that on a global scale and it's going to be messy. Now, are there also moments of transcendence, of breaking through? But I am very wary, and always have been, maybe it's the New Yorker in me, of these Pollyanna declarations that we are moving towards full enlightenment. Every period in history thought that to some degree, right? But if we look at it from a soul perspective, and the idea that the earth plane is actually a negative plane, right? And that we come here to work through our material before ascending again.
Then hardly believe that.
Right?
It's my whole book's about.
Right. So if we're here to work through that, well, then we're here to up-level ourselves. That is why I've always found movements very scary. Because if you look at history, movements that maybe started with the kernel of, great advancement for humankind, like Marxism, left more dead than any other political system in history, right? So I'm always bringing it back to the individual to look at the projection, to say, what is my participation in this? If I am calling that person X, Y, and Z, where do I have that within myself?
Always.
Right?
Always.
3 fingers pointed forward.
That's one of my favorite expressions. Point one finger at someone else. You have 3 pointing back at yourself. Try it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way it works. Like, it's you. No, actually. And I say that you can't, what you see in another person is what you hold in yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Yes.
So if you're, talking negatively about another woman, or you think that she is beautiful and successful and you cheer for her, it's
positive projection.
A positive projection, because you can hold it within yourself.
Yeah. But we are also in what I've started calling, although maybe someone called it this before, the opinion economy.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
We're in it.
Right. Where people are making a lot of money with outlandish statements and with stoking the fire.
Yeah, it hurts my soul to see that.
Yeah. And, all of that is ego-based.
Yeah.
We all have ego. I have plenty of ego, right? But all of that it's feeding me.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I put this opinion out and I'm right, then I am morally righteous. Again, read history. Like, I am morally righteous. I am superior. I get into heaven, right? Or whatever it is. And so if you pull the lens back, we can see that it's happening not just between individuals, but it's happening between, what one could call movements. Countries, but ideologies, even more than countries, right? That permeate different nations. And so, I know a lot of people, and you're one of them, you have a big reach. It's a beautiful thing. I don't think that's my journey in this lifetime. I think it's very localized. I think it's very intimate. And I don't know.
Can I reflect something on that front?
Yes.
And thank you for, in the spectrum of platforms, I'm somewhere in the middle, but I have a reach. It's not that you have a reach too. And I think that this is a reframe I want to offer everyone listening, because I think that people are like, well, she's big on Instagram. It's like, who cares? It's let me say this.
Yeah.
You're one of my teachers and guides.
Yeah.
My one-to-one work with you went into a chapter in my book that's going to be read by thousands and thousands of people. You're reaching thousands and thousands. The ripple effect, the influence, it's about going narrow and deep, which I feel is more gratifying, frankly, than shallow and wide, and has more potency. And so I think that
that's how I feel, though.
Yeah.
If this were, if we were in another area of history, like I might be the conciliary to, et cetera. Like that's the role I like to play.
Yeah,
right.
totally.
I have a lot of my clients are, not all, I have the entire spectrum, but are very, very successful and have, you're one of them, right? Have wide reaches. I like playing that role. I like playing it, to a full-time mother. I like playing it to a CEO. I like playing it to scientists, and I like playing it to spiritual teachers, and I like, and everything in between.
Yeah.
I mean, the coolest thing about my job is how many fascinating professions there are,
sure.
and that I get to meet, and like, it's just fascinating and enriching for me. But what I'm saying is that I think that we automatically assume that in order to live a fulfilling life, the reach has to be big in a specific metric.
Totally. And I want to demystify that, because all those people that you just explained have an incredibly important role to play.
Like I think being a mother is the most important role
right now in humanity.
Yes.
And you as the astrologer, guide, teacher, mentor, I'll speak for myself. You've helped to inform my reach, what I say with my reach.
And I have, a lot of clients who are actors, directors, writers, photographers, journalists, and so yes, there's that as well. I'm just saying that I think that we as a culture, let me contextualize this. I have a lot of people who are like, you need to scale your business.
I'm sure we've talked about this.
And maybe, but it's really fulfilling as it is.
Like, mic drop. Let's just take a beat so people can hear that. That's going back to everything we were talking about.
Yeah.
Where's the boat going?
Yeah.
Like maybe, but I'm good.
Yep.
What yardstick are you trying to measure your scaling again? It's not yours.
I live in a beautiful home.
You do.
Like, I travel to beautiful places. I can afford to nourish my body with, unfortunately, in this world right now, it's more expensive to eat the things that aren't covered in pesticides and chemicals. I get to nourish my body in that way and with certain practices.
And what
won
else?
The lottery.
Right, you sure did. And you're doing it with your mastery, which is obviously more than astrology.
Yeah.
It's you. But there's always a spectrum of people who understand astrology.
Yeah.
So for the novice, someone who doesn't know much about it, what are just a couple things that they could start with?
The moon sign.
The moon sign. Yes. Say more about this.
So the moon represents our emotional landscape.
And we find it by looking at our birth
natal
date,
chart.
Our natal chart.
Yes, which is a snapshot of the sky, the moment we were born. So you need the time, you need the location. Although a lot can be gleaned by just the day and the location.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of clients who've been adopted or who don't
know their time.
Yeah. I have clients who are one of 11. They're siblings of 11. And they don't have their
parents forgot
in another country, and they don't have their times. And so, we work with what we have, and there's a lot to be gleaned. But yes. And so I always say start with the moon sign, because it's the innermost needs, and the needs can't be negotiated with. It's like the first 3 chakras. The upper chakras you can negotiate with, but the core chakras you can't. They need to be processed, felt, healed, right? So the moon needs to be satisfied.
When I found out my moon sign, my whole life made sense. And
Yes.
I'm not exaggerating.
Yes.
I'm a Cancer moon.
Yep.
And I'm a Leo sun, Virgo rising, both very ambitious in different ways. But I love being alone.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like an introvert at heart and can be really cranky when I'm not, and emo and moody and very tender and sensitive. And I was like, but I'm this extrovert. I'm always being on, and people see me as the Leo fire. And why do I hate this in a way?
Yeah. And so it's about, right? It's about finding ways to satisfy the varying aspects of ourselves. And just like different circumstances, you ever meet someone You're just different with that person than you are. That's chemistry. So when we take 2 charts, that's an example of where the chemistry shows up, right? But I think if you're just getting to astrology, the moon sign is a really, really potent place to start. And I think it's really important to remember that there are 12 houses. We all have all the signs within us. We have all the archetypes within us. We just default to some more readily, right? And then within those 12 pie slices, there are 10 main celestial bodies. And those celestial bodies are forming geometric degrees to one another. There's also hemispheric focus. And so all of this to say that if you're looking and you go, I don't really feel like a Leo, although you have a lot of Leo, just as an example, there's many reasons that could be. And so to not get hung up on the piecemeal, because I would say if in terms of astrology, the thing that I do, and I don't do a lot of things well, but I do this well, is I really take the whole picture, right? And so someone will come to me and they'll say, I was told this. And I said, that's a novice astrologer's perspective, because they are not contextualizing it. They're not contextualizing it both in your life and your history and where you were born and your conditioning, where you were raised, your family environment, but they're also not contextualizing it within the energetics of the chart. And most of the time when I work, they're like, oh, this makes so much more sense, because we want the quick fix. So we want to say, oh, I'm a Capricorn Venus. This is what this means. But nothing makes sense decontextualized.
Exactly. And that's why your work is so unique.
That's why I love it.
And you can tell. And you help people so much, like me. No,
such an honor.
Truly. Honestly, you're in my new book. I talked about you on a recent podcast. I threw myself that funeral. What's up? They can go listen to that one.
Like, what?
I did a whole podcast a couple of weeks ago on why you need to throw your past. Yeah. Remember how I shared that in a moon circle?
Yes.
And I took the ashes and I replanted them in a bed of white daffodils.
Amazing.
Like my old patterning had come back and hadn't integrated her. And I shared that in one of your moon circles. You were like, do that, Jessica, and write as her, channel her, but talk as her. You gave me the instructions.
That moon circle was honestly one of the best ones. It was like 7 of us.
100%. Yes. The more intimate they are, this kind of sweeter.
I've capped them now at 15, but in the winter months, they tend to be 6, 7
They're
people.
Cozy.
It's so good.
And
I also
rich.
do, for your listeners, I do a virtual one.
I know you do.
Yeah.
We're going to link you all in the show notes. And in fact, before we do that, I just have a few final quick fire questions for you.
Quick fire.
Me too. Okay. So what's your favorite spiritual book?
Letting Go, David Hawkins. No, sorry. Entering the Castle, Caroline Myss.
We'll link them all in the show notes. Who's your favorite spiritual teacher?
I'd have to say Mary Holnick, Dr. Mary Holnick, who I learned from. I've never seen mastery of that level in terms of facilitation in my life. She's in her 80s. She retired this year. And I've never seen anything like that in my life.
What a gift for you.
She extraordinary facilitator. But Caroline Myss in the public eye.
Yeah. She was one of the first spiritual books I read.
Dr. Mary Holnick is in the public, but not in the same. Yeah.
Do you have an angel or an ancestor or a goddess archetype or a spirit guide that you work with or is a favorite?
Mm-hmm. Mother Mary.
Yes. I love Mother Mary.
Yeah. I actually, this is a whole other conversation. I actually considered converting to Catholicism in my early 20s because I felt such a strong affinity to Mother Mary.
We have to have you back on the show and actually talk all about that. That's incredible. Because we identify so closely as Jews today.
Yes.
And would love to learn that. So I think that'd be powerful to share. Do you believe in aliens?
Yes, because I don't understand, just space never ended. Like, there has to be. I cannot believe we are the only life form.
Retweet?
Not really that profound, but yes.
Thank you for saying it's scientifically impossible. It's not like weird or woo to believe that extraterrestrials like actually exist. And
space never. I mean, that I can.
I can't wrap my brain around.
We're not meant to as mortal
nature of the universe.
Yes, we're not meant to as mortal beings. But how egotistical to think that we are the only conscious sentient beings. By the way, dogs are sentient. Animals are sentient. So
Final question.
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean to you to be a co-creator of the new earth?
To get out of my own way and to take personal accountability and personal inventory for my shit.
Period. And that we will make that a quotable, actually. That's going to be a meme now. That is so perfectly said. Beyond. That is my work. 100%. And when we do that, we do create a new earth because we're awake and we're conscious.
Yes.
And we're remembered. Dani Beinstein, what a treasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. This was such an honor.
Oh my God, the honor is mine. And you're actually one of my first guests in this studio. So it's a full circle moment.
In Nashville, in Yin, Nashville, in like receptive. How amazing is the land here? It's just,
it's so yin. You said, back to our full circle, when I met you in Soho,
yeah,
right? We had a session there.
Yes.
And you said something about this land. You said it rains so much and the soil is so fertile. Like it was so like, I never grew up in, I'm Midwest Chicago girl.
Manhattan.
Right.
I just
like the South. Like who knew? There's so much Gaia frequency here. The green, the trees, the animals, the flowers, the plants, the insects. Like you just, the only other place I could compare it to personally is like Costa Rica.
Yes.
Like where I feel that close to the earth.
Yes.
And it's a different earth, but it's not a jungle, but it's these rolling forests and farms and trails and waterfalls. Like you can find it all. Who knew Tennessee?
I know.
And I just feel so, it's why I really came here. It's been a sacrifice to some degree of,
Always is.
Yeah.
And there's aspects, part of me will always be a New Yorker at heart. There's part of me it's challenging for me not to be on the ocean or near the ocean, or like a giant lake. There's Radnor Lake, which I love, but not
Radnor
like
Lake.
a giant lake. But there is water everywhere. There is abundance.
I love the rain. Like people say it rains a lot here. I'm like, good. I love it. Keeps it so fertile and nourishing and rich. And it does have a feminine frequency here.
Yes.
And I'm just able to breathe here.
Yes. I healed my nervous system by moving here.
Same. And it brought us together.
It did.
I want people to know all about where to find you. So shout out your website.
So
your
my
Instagram.
website is Dani Beinstein or DanielleBeinstein.com. I have a Substack.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Dani's emails are genius. I love getting them.
And IG. I'm not even trying. I'm finding myself less and less engaged with Instagram, but I'm there and I try and provide insight, but I'd like to move things towards Substack. And
so
most
good.
of it is, you don't have to pay to join, but I like the richer, deeper conversation over there.
Yeah. It's
in that way.
Your writing, your content is beautiful. You do the moon circles, you do one-on-ones. Once in a while you do retreats.
Yes. And I drop new sessions every 30 days. So I am available to people and then people can work with me more long-term and then we set up a time that's more consistent. But I think sometimes when I've been on podcasts, people are like, oh, I can't work with her because she'll be, no, I do that so that people can join.
Every time I go to your website, so I might have to wait a few weeks, but I can get in.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend working with you because it's so much richer than just an astrology reading. You have, your words have been like tuning forks on my path.
Like there's no better comment. It's why I do what I do.
Yeah, I mean it. Thank you for being on The Spiritual Hustler.
Thank you for having me.
It was the best hour.
Oh,
I love you.
Good.